Hello and welcome to the New York Empire podcast presented by Greatest Ultimate Bag. I'm Dan Hilton and today we've got a little New England flair going on the podcast. It's Ben Katz and Ryan Holmes together. You've done them solo, but now you got some help, I guess. So out of the cauldron and into the 2022 season, I guess.
Happy to be here.
All right, so we're going to get right to the business of this. Ben, I mean, you guys now both signed the 7th and 9th signing for the New York Empire this season. Ben, starting with you, since you you were signed first this season, you'll be entering your 4th year with the Empire. And just health-wise, I mean, it was probably not as publicized, but dealing with a few things throughout the pandemic and things like that. How are you feeling going into 2022, and what do you think this season's going to look like for you?
I'm feeling great. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer and had some surgeries for that and dealing with that, but physically feeling great and, ready to go blow the door off some people.
Yeah, of course, looking fitter as 2021 went on, certainly. And Ryan, now you joined in 2016, and this is going to be your first year. I mean, drum roll, I think we're announcing something here as a captain. So what went into you wanting to take on this leadership role with the team?
I mean, a big part of it is just a lot of experience. I've matured a lot over the years that I've been playing Frisbee. I have a pretty different perspective from Jeff and Jack, who both provide an extremely valuable on-field motivation and play-by-example motivation. I'm a lot more of a calculating sort of motivational person when it comes to the leadership role, and that's something I really wanted to emphasize on Empire, or at least get the additional perspective of. And yeah, I just really want to see this team be as good as it can possibly be, which is pretty incredibly good. So I'm excited to see what we can do.
Yeah, you have to say the ceiling is certainly high with Antoine Davis being announced. There might be more big names down the pike as well. But Ben, speaking of big names, you were an all-star back in 2019, and it looks like you have even more competition for a spot at that game on your own team. Again, now last time it was 4, because Yacht went, and Bo Kittredge went, and Jeff Babbitt went, and you went. Now, Bo Kittredge may be gone, but then Spiders All-Star Antoine Davis has joined the team, and AUDL first teamers Jack Williams and Ryan Oscar are also on the team. They're still around. So how would you start? I want to start the campaign for Katz to make his second All-Star game, whenever that is announced and whenever that happens. But what does that campaign look like? I mean, I guess, Ryan, if you're going to be the campaign manager, you can throw your hat in first. But first, I want to let the candidate go forward with his platform.
I'd be the working man party. You got all these superstars, but just the guy that clocks in every day, grinds it out. Fan vote. Fan vote's coming for me.
You know, as the working man's captain, as I've been referred to several times on this team, I would say, statistics show a lot when it comes to impact on the team, but there are these people, I mean, honestly, Jack Williams is one of these as well, that statistics underrepresents. And Ben Katz is absolutely one of those people. You have no idea how many throws get thrown to Jeff Babbitt because Ben has just been monkey wrenching the underspace for a full 15 seconds on field. And that's like 3 full, possessions that he has, 3 full individual possessions that he has just not let a person do what they want under. So all of a sudden they get frustrated and throw to Jeff. There's no stat for that, and Ben would lead the league in it if it was a stat.
Yeah, well, Ryan, actually, let me follow up on that. So he does have, I mean, he's right there. I mean, he's sitting right here listening to us. But he does have the reputation of being one of the best poachers. I mean, so for simple layman's terms, right? For the average watcher who might know what a poach is, right? He's one of the best poachers in the league and also one of the best on-disc defenders as well. So not just in zone coverage, but actually on the disc as well in the entire league. So, of course, if we could explain what he does, right? If we actually could break that Zabuta film it down, maybe others could replicate it, but they can't for a reason. So I would say beyond that, for you, as being one of his teammates on whether it's the D2 line or D1 line when you switch over as well, how complicated does his skill set make your job, and what's the secret sauce to playing with a force like that? Because I think the counter argument is, as good as he is at all those things, of course, when you show up to pickup or something at a lower level, if one person is poaching or somebody's just kind of doing their own thing because they have that ability, but not everybody's on the same page, certainly the younger players who are trying to jump on a D-line with Ben Katz, certainly the learning curve is quite steep because they got to figure out a lot of different coverages and understand what he's doing. And they have to understand what he's doing so they can understand what they're doing.
So that's definitely true to a point. I think playing with Ben, you can play differently. But also, I wouldn't sell Ben short here. He's not paying attention to 7 people on the field at a time. He's paying attention to 13 and himself, but at least he controls that one. So when Ben sees that his teammates aren't moving in the same pattern that allow him to poach in a certain way, sure, he might make the mistake of going for a poach that he would on D. Like, let's say Ben Katz is on D2 for one of these lines. Like, we're like a little loose on the legs and we want Ben to play on D2. He will play differently for those people. But speaking to playing with it, honestly, it's a lot of trust. Like, you just start to get used to the fact that, okay, Ben, like, I don't actually have to dig on this under as much when I see someone streaking deep, because I just know that Ben is under me and that he's going to pick that up in a place that it's really meaningful. Or actually, I think the most important spot to think about it is on the mark. When you are marking somebody and you know that Ben is on the reset, he knows the most dangerous places. I don't have to take weird stabs at a throw that I think I would have to cover against someone who might get beat up line or something. I'm just going to trust it. And it just allows you to play a lot more flexibly and a lot more decisively on what you take away.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Ben, so we've talked about you enough, so I'm going to let you dole the compliments back the other way. So Ryan might be known for his pulls, certainly, I think, around the league, but I don't think his overall game actually gets the attention that it deserves. What do you think are some of the qualities of Ryan's game that don't get the shine that you might hear from other players around the league?
Oh, yeah, the perfect man. We've been playing together since college, and so I've seen quite a lot of Ryan. And back in his athletic prime, he was a dominant force in terms of speed and jumping ability. He might be the first to tell you he's lost a step or two, but he's gained an ultimate instinct that he didn't need to have before. And so now when he understands that he's not just going to run faster than the person and get the D, he's going to be in great position and just grind them. And a lot of offenders will tell you the worst kind of defender is the one that's going to grind them. And Ryan will do that to a T.
Yeah, so for both of you guys who are projected to be playing more D than O-line this year, certainly, again, for both of you, with the emphasis, I think, especially being at the tryout the other night, the emphasis is on getting players that are just physically, they might be raw in terms of ultimate, but just physically, just these specimens that you can kind of mold in whatever image you need to. How do you think that mix is going to work this season with, again, maybe some fresh faces on most likely D2, but throughout your D-line, as you're going through those different sets and whether you're going to play zone or man-to-man and incorporating guys who are going to be able to do just what you said, Ben, as Ryan did 12, 13 years ago. Not to date you, but 12, 13 years ago when all of us were back in college and that kind of thing, learning and picking it up. So, yeah, going all the way back to those days, when you were physical and almost putting yourself in their shoes now, as you guys, again, are trying to teach a newer generation. Ryan, you go first.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I think it's interesting. It's easy to break a team down into O1, D1, D2. But one of the things I really want to stress when we have a bunch of athleticism coming in is that the lines on this team can be a lot more fluid. You even said like Ben Katz projected to play more D than O. I'm not sure that's actually going to be what happens this year. You could see Empire running a 9-10 person offense that is way more fluid, and all of a sudden the people who don't play an offensive point are playing on our D line. And we have these athletic bodies that can just run them down. So like imagine in the second quarter, you got a D2 line of 4 athletes that we have coached into and captained and led into playing a specific type of defense that a specific line is good at, like a grindy man with like an FM force that we're funneling them into the middle of the field. And we have people that know to attack what we are letting up, which is the middle of the field. And then all of a sudden you have like Jack Williams and Ben Yacht with 4 super athletic people and Ben Katz on a D2 line. That is an insane second D line. So I would almost say D1, D2 are useless terms on this Empire team, ideally this year. And you're just going to see some crazy lines come through with some crazy grinding mentality on our defense with some really specific implementations that I can't wait to see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, not only are we looking forward to that, but I think that's true too with the depth on the team. But we saw last year, we saw Yacht or Williams based on, and the AUDL is a little bit different than other Ultimate that people might be playing because there are 4 quarters. You know what the situation is, you know what the score is, and time and score do matter. And so you might see something in the second quarter that you won't see in the fourth quarter. And those things are important, as you mentioned, where if the Empire up by 3, we know that one of the dreaded numbers in the league is 5. If you go down by 5, that's a tough road to come back from. So if the Empire up by 3 and they get that break to be up 4, who knows what D-line you're going to see. I completely agree with that. And of course, you guys know better than me. But all right, so we're going to go all the way back now. We're going all the way back to UMass. And Ryan, I'll start with you on this one. Can you, again, Ben, you did it the first time you're on the show, but can you once again explain how important Bill Stewart, your coach at UMass, was to your Ultimate careers?
Yeah, that was like the first tactical coach I had ever worked with. I mean, we had tactical players. His son, Robin, was a tactical player and did lead us to a couple strategies. But having this, coach figure that came in when I was a freshman and a sophomore for regionals after the Amherst College team was out of the series and would come in and in 3 weeks, like teach us these X's and O's that just really improved the team. And that was the first look into a true leadership I had seen, like a true coaching leadership I had seen. And honestly, you asked like one of the reasons why I want to be captain. He's an inspiration for me to come in and inspire that kind of galvanizing motivation to improve some of the technical stuff we did going into regionals. A huge impact on my career and mentality and everything about it, to be honest.
Yeah, so for me, Bill actually didn't ever coach us because maybe Ryan Drost had something to say about it in Amherst College made regionals, so he wasn't available for UMass. But just getting to know him and playing with him, he was, like Ryan said, just incredibly intelligent, and I mean his ability was incredible as well. And just really one of the biggest things is seeing him excel at such a high level and being the age that he was a big thing that stuck out to me. Just, hey, if you treat yourself right, you can do this until whenever you decide, really. And I think that's a big thing for me.
Well, speaking of big and ability, at UMass, Ben, you also played with a young Jeff Babbitt, and Ryan, you actually played with a high school version of Jeff Babbitt. And so we're not just talking on the field, but physically, yeah, maybe you could have guessed what he would become at that time, but did you expect that he become the defensive leader of a team and the vocal leader and again, all the off-field stuff that Jeff Babbitt is to the Empire? Did you really think that he would turn into what he did today? Ben, I'll let you go first on this one.
I'd say that when he was around us, who were anywhere from 3 to 7 years older than him, he was a little more quiet when he was younger. But I mean, it was all there. The fire was there, and his older brother was on UMass with us, and he was going to have his traits and just be a similar person. And so yeah, you could see it coming. And Jeff's always been incredibly intelligent and knows how to get the best out of people, so it's not a surprise that he's where he is now.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. I would say if you had quizzed me after playing the one season of club I did with Jeff when he was in high school, my only question of whether he was going to commit to Frisbee, because he was still playing football at that time. I wasn't sure he was going to be a Frisbee player at all. But if you had said he's definitely going to play Frisbee, do you feel like he's going to be the defensive leader of a team in 4 years? Yes, of course. Like, I've met his brother. I know what that fire looks like. I know what that spirit looks like. I know what that athleticism looks like, especially with the smithing and the polishing of playing it for a couple of years. So yeah, I would say no doubt at all that he would end up in this spot.
Yeah, I'll tell people.
It was sort of obvious.
Yeah, I'll tell people too. I mean, his parents frequent Empire games, and a quick conversation. That fire is hereditary. It's one of the things you'll learn in about 2 minutes. So shouts to the Babbitt family. So yeah, now as well as playing for UMass, you both also played on Ironside, a team that finally won the big one last decade before disbanding. But comparing what you knew to be Boston Ultimate then, and then, Ben, you can add in your experience in the MOU for the Boston Whitecaps, too, back in our MOU days. But how do you think Boston Ultimate has changed now that you're facing off against the Boston Glory? Almost taking that team and saying that's what Boston Ultimate is now, and looking back to what Boston Ultimate was, now we're looking, 12 12 or so years ago, 11, 10 years ago for Boston Ironside. Ryan, you go first on this one.
Well, I think Ben is a much better person to answer this question. I don't know the young Boston that well. I'm going to age myself here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know that many of the young Boston players. I mean, I know Lundish because he went to Needham, same high school as me. I've known him for a while. Honestly, from a high level, from a big picture, I don't see that much of a change. I feel like Boston still has the same fire, the same spirit, the same drive that they've had when I was there and playing for Ironside. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to leave this one to Ben because he has so much more experience in that arena for both sides of it. So take it away, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, that is a pretty good assessment in general, and it helps that Sam Rosenthal, who's the glory coach, was your teammate on Ironside.
Mm-hmm.
So that thought process is still there. I'd say the one kind of difference is they're a little more willing to be less rigid. Like back in the heyday of Boston, it was we run vert, we play person defense, and we do it really well. And they found out that works up to a certain extent, and sometimes it can win it all, but sometimes when you're playing against the other best teams in the world, it doesn't do it. So to their credit, they've been like, maybe we can adjust and still have these tenets, but have it in our back pocket to play a zone or to play a junk or to do anything like that.
Yeah, and I would add offensively, another UMass alum in Ben Sadok, the ability he has, I think, perfectly fits where the game is going, where it's smaller, it can be more possession-based offensively, and just the number of skills that he has on the disc, throwing and handling, and even have his athleticism, I think, again, is going in a different direction, if you will. So that is almost an updated version of what Boston Ultimate has been. And speaking of East Division opponents, Ben, your old team, the Montreal Royale, won the Canadian Cup last season, so you can't take any credit for that. I don't know how many players are still left from your era, but they did look, and actually, I should mention is too, Nasser Mbe-Vogel as well was watching from afar, of course. So they did look like the best of the teams north of the border. It must be said, Toronto, they have a tremendous legacy, of course, as a franchise, but they seem to be in a rebuilding phase, and they also, even in that Canadian Cup game, pushed Montreal to the very limits. Then Ottawa Outlaws as well have their fair share of good players. But again, so with the Royale just now coming back, I mean, again, who knows? We're knocking on all the wood we can for COVID and borders and things like that. That said, they did all that without Quentin Bonneau last year, who is arguably one of the top 5 to 10 cutters in the entire league. But what's the ceiling, you think, Ben, for this Royal team with Jacob Brissett, Sasha Sokolsky on O, and then Christophe Tremblay-Junkas on D, as well as a number of other young and veteran pieces, Arsenal as well, showing up there. So what's their ceiling? How high are they going to fly in the East?
I mean, I think that all depends on them. They, even in the last year that they played with the United States teams, they had the ability to push anyone. That was the year we won, and they beat us no, we were undefeated that year. They just pushed us in ways that we didn't quite expect. And I mean, you got guys like Kevin Quinlan and Andre Arsenal still there from when I was there, and they're just the wily vets now that are going to carry the team, and the young guys that you mentioned are adding a nice little 1-2 punch to that. I think they'll be a handful. Also, with that incredible home crowd they have, they'll make it hard for any team that comes up to Montreal.
Yeah, and then Ryan, actually adding to that, so now being a captain, as far as you working on the scout and working on this kind of stuff, I mean, how much Montreal have you rewatched already from last season? Or everybody, really, the East Division. Yeah, I mean, like, how are you going about that process?
Honestly, I rewatched more from 2019 than I watched of last season, just because I want to see them play against DC and us specifically. But that team is super dangerous. I think Ben put it really well. We did go undefeated in 2019, but if I recall correctly, we had to make a pretty significant comeback against Montreal in like a third or a fourth quarter.
And at home, too.
At home. It was a ridiculously close game. They are an incredibly dangerous team. You see some plays out of them that are just like, whoa. All of a sudden, we're playing a game on a team that, I'm not going to lie, I think we looked past them in that game. I think we looked right through them and they were like, yeah, we are very real. And yeah, they showed it to us. And yeah, mentally speaking, no team is invisible. No team is transparent. We have to beat them all. We had a close game with Philly last year for the same reason. We just looked through, and these teams are all very good. The East is a dangerous division. Nothing is free. So yeah, motivation going in is high, and they are a team that scouting is powerful against. They have some pretty serious players and contributors individually. So yeah, understanding that team. I'm going to be watching a lot more Montreal footage as the season comes closer.
Yeah, well, an interesting note about them is they have at least 1 or 2 players that are ambidextrous, which is something that through the years, like, it's one thing to have a Matt Pippin Aletta, who's a famous lefty for the Empire for a long time, but with players now learning how to play with and throw with both hands at a younger and younger ages now, you definitely see that with especially the Raleigh Flyers, that they're younger players, they're two-handed. So do you think the approach to marking and even how you're, I know you guys aren't in the coaching game, but you think as younger players are being taught at the high school level in coaching, do you think marking is going to change at all, or do you think we're still like a ways away from that, dealing with the ability for players to throw with both hands?
Not enough players right now do it to drastically change the overarching theme of marking, but the AUDL field presents a pretty unique influence on marking already. There's a lot of space for innovation in the marking game. In fact, Jeff and I and Ben this past weekend were often talking about field positioning, marking, and defensive strategies when it comes to the AUDL field, its width, and what you can actually achieve with a mark. So I would just say that ambidextrous players might not be the motivation exclusively, but the dangerousness of both sides of the field in the AUDL and the skill at which people can attack both sides is going to change the marking game in this league for sure.
Yeah, Ben, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree that right now I don't think there's going to be a lot to change in terms of, hey, anyone can throw it anyway, but more specifically when you do know that someone in particular is doing that, there will certainly be a scouting report on it, and maybe it's just, hey, you have to pay attention to their pivot feet now and which one they're pivoting with to know if you're marking a righty or a lefty at that point. But it's definitely an interesting little quirk that is fun to watch.
Yeah, it's true. You can't just scream lefty from the sideline, because then the next you're going to be screaming righty from the sideline and righty lefty. But yeah, it's both. Okay, guys, you've gone through the difficulties of talking all the ultimate, but for those who don't know, and I think we got a little bit into this on your first appearances, you both are, I'd say, board game aficionados. Aficionado is fair, correct? For both of you?
Enthusiasts, at least.
Yeah, certainly like board games a lot.
Okay, so I'm finding it more difficult as the Empire signing with these 2 duo batches to create these new lightning rounds. So we're going to do a board game edition lightning round here. So right now we've got 9 players that we know will be on the Empire next season. There might be some other you have an idea of, but there are 9 players that we know. So you can write them down, or I think you know who they are at this point. It's Jack Williams, it's Ben Yacht, it's Ryan Osgar, it's Jeff Babbitt, Antoine Davis, who I know you know probably the least. Obviously, he hasn't been a teammate yet, so it's okay if he's not picked for any of these categories. I don't think he'll take too much offense to it. But then also Elliot Chartok, Ben Katz, Marquez Brownlee, and Ryan Holmes. So I'm going to ask you board game related questions, and I want you to tell me which teammate of those 9 best fits the description. Ready to go?
Fire
away.
All right, let's do it. So if any of the 9 of you designed a game, so designing the game, rules, even the board, getting creative here, who would make the best game? Katz, I'm going to have you go first.
Well, Jeff did that. He used to play PUBG, the video game, a lot, and actually designed and created a PUBG board game. So gonna have to go with Jeff there.
Yeah, that's no contest.
All right.
That's Jeff. Yeah.
All right. So if somebody has to be the wild card, which may or may not mean the most likely to give up first and just try to watch the world burn, right? Who's the player that at one point you're like, oh, I think they know that they've lost, and now it's going to be chaos from here on out. So who is that player? Ryan.
That is a difficult question.
And
I think I'm going to go with Elliot Charta. I think Elliot might be the person who like notices that he's going to lose. Pretty smart guy, pretty analytical guy, notices that he's going to lose and is like, how much nonsense can I create in the next, half hour of this board game? Yeah, I think Elliot's my guess.
I'm going Ryan Oscar for similar reasons.
Yeah.
He'll understand when he's going to lose, and he's going to be really upset that he's going to lose.
Yeah.
And he might not just watch the entire world burn, but he's going to definitely torpedo at least one person.
So as far as, speaking of losing, who takes losing a board game the hardest? So basically, who's getting the sorest loser award?
Out of those people, I'll go Oscar again for similar reasons. He's just so competitive, and I mean we're all very competitive,
right.
But if I'm losing a board game, I can generally take it, but he'll go crazy.
Honestly, I don't know. I can defer to Ben's Oscar here, but I don't know if I know anyone that like takes losing the game pretty hard.
Just go Antoine.
Yeah, it's probably Antoine. I hear he's a crazy person when he loses board games.
He's also competitive too. So, all right, next one. Who is most likely to cheat? Ryan. You might have actually experienced with this before.
Most likely to cheat on purpose?
Try to get away with it, I guess.
I'm going to say we have an honorable team.
Wow.
Nobody. I don't think anyone would try to cheat.
I'm just going to say that Marquez has kind of an image to protect, and he can't be losing too many board games. So I'm going Kez on this one.
Well, I don't want to tip your hat, but I mean, it could be that somebody's gotten away with it too. It's very possible that somebody is cheating amongst the ranks, and we're not sure who's getting away with it. And
that's true.
Yeah, 3 or 4 times you've won in a row, you've got to ask questions. So, all right, next one. Who is most willing to play a marathon of a game? Meaning we've got 10 hours to spare in the off season, and it's a war of attrition. Who are you going to sit with at that table for 10 hours thinking, I've got to outlast this guy?
Who do I least want to sit with at that table?
No. I just mean who's most willing to be at that table longest. However long it takes to win that game, they're going to sit there.
Oh, Jeff also. I think he's the most committed to those things. He will play an infinitely long game.
I think if it's a good game, then Jeff will. No. But if it's really just sit there at the table and be there, then he'll not worry about it. I think I could just I'll bunker down.
Yeah,
I could see it being Ben for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say I only got to see it once, but there's a calm and a cool and a collection where you kind of look at your watch and say, "Time has gone by, and Katz is still here with the same look on his face, ready to go." So, all right, next one. So I'm not great at board games. I've played Monopoly. I've played Settlers of Catan. So if we're playing a game like that where you can have mercy and sometimes you don't, and it is mano a mano, who's showing no mercy? Who's taking all your money on the Monopoly board? It Settlers of Catan, even if you're in 4th place or last place, they're still going to come after you.
I'll go Benny. Ben Yacht.
This one's hard because for as much as I think we're an honorable team, we're also a bunch of very competitive people.
Right.
So I think almost anybody in that list, if they thought the best move for them was to take money from the person who is in dead last and is definitely going to come in dead last, would do that in a heartbeat. Not a single one of us would hesitate.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, there's a level of professional ultimate player. There's a level of competition necessary, and it's why that AUDL maybe not be for everybody. Okay, this one's hard, and I totally understand if there is no answer to this one. But it's the start of the game, and everybody's grabbing their totems or character pieces, whatever you want to call them. Who's the most picky or superstitious about which one they get? And I only ask that because I myself tend to be really picky, and I say, okay, that's the piece I want to ride with forever. So is there somebody who's very particular?
I feel like Jack Williams could be really weird about which board game piece he plays as. I could see him being like a Battleship only Monopoly player or something like that. That feels very Jack to me.
I like that. I think the only thing that popped into my mind is if there's a nice pink piece, then Jeff's gonna definitely take that one.
All right, next one. Is there anybody, and this can also apply to video games as well, that has to be the same character? It's very similar to the last one, but is there somebody that has to be the same character each and every time in a video game? And again, I'll use myself as an example. If we're playing Mario Kart, and it's been the same way for 25 years, if we're playing Mario Kart, I have to be Mario, every single time, even though I don't say his name right. I have to be the same character every time, just so I know who I am, I know it's part of the screen I'm on, and we have to go from there. Also not great with video games, throw that one out there.
How many gold coins has Jeff wasted re-rolling Shotgun Master and Super People in the last 1 month of playing Super People? It could be Jeff. He picks the same character in this game that he streams a lot.
I'm gonna it's less important in board games because the characters don't have that many different traits. But for video games, I'm going with this man right here, Ryan Holmes. He'll know his characters inside and out and know what he can do with them, and that'll work for him.
All right, and then finally, and this is the toughest one, you might have to say everybody for this one. If you're all playing a game for the very first time, so there's an introduction of a new game, went through the rules, everybody's ready to go, who's most likely to win that first maiden game?
Oh, Ben is really good at this. Katz is really good at this. We play a lot of that at Jeff's, by the way. This is an experience thing we do. Pretty much anyone. I mean, often the three of us, me, Jeff, and Ben, are famous for buying a board game on some of our road trips. We find like a local board game store and buy a game and then try and just play it. You won the first game of Root, or you were winning the first game of Root when we had to stop in Atlanta.
Yep.
So yeah, this is a solid Ben Katz. I think he's the odds-on favorite in that situation.
Yeah, I think I'd pick myself as well. But the one caveat of Jeff would understand the game as well or better than me, but he would get thrown off by other people not quite understanding the game, whereas I would see that happening and capitalize on that.
Yeah, to be honest, I think the three of us, when we play board games, are pretty fast to understand the game. Ben definitely goes for the win the first time. Jeff definitely makes a lot of assumptions about how other people are going to play the game. And I generally just like to make wombo combos the first time in all these games. So, like Ben said, I like to find strategies and dig through them a lot. So it doesn't always produce a win on the first try.
Well, and Lanta, I can speak firsthand. Maybe it's because I call myself a professional, but I didn't even get through the rules as you guys are reading out the rules, and I said I'm not sitting down for this. Enjoy, and the level of competition again gets me. I'd rather try to get a little nugget by the side or go back for seconds for the team meals. But all right, Anyway, so there will be fun on the road trips. There'll be fun at the home games as well. So Ben Katz, Ryan Holmes, thanks so much again for joining the show. Again, this is UMass, this is New England Central, but it's all about the New York Empire for the 2022 season. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, and thanks to you, the listeners, as this wraps up another edition of the New York Empire podcast from the entire New York Empire family. We'll talk to you soon.